Hello, welcome to our latest webinar, Beyond the Myths, International HR and Inclusive Leadership in the Middle East. And I'm here today with Kelly Blackaby. Hello, Kelly.
Hi, Fiona.
In our latest webinar, we're delighted to welcome Kelly, who is a Regional HR Director for Europe, the Middle East and South Asia. So, with extensive experience leading international HR strategies across the Middle East and beyond, Kelly has spent much of her career helping global organisations build inclusive, high-performing cultures. Kelly, lovely to see you here today.
Thank you, and thanks, Fiona. It's always a privilege to share my insights and knowledge of the region.
And just to clarify what the region is, you do mention the GCC. That's 6 Arab countries in the Gulf region, and they are Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates, known as UAE. So shall we start with common misconceptions about living and working in the Middle East? Because I know our audience, could be dual career couples, families, employers, the relocation professionals, often consider the Middle East as quite a daunting place to accept relocation to.
Yes. No, I'd love to. So I was in Saudi Arabia for almost a decade. I moved over in 2008. So it was much earlier than some of the change that's been happening in Saudi Arabia recently that people will have seen. So I guess let's start with the myths, because I think they still shape how people perceive the region today. So one of the biggest misconceptions is that relocating to the GCC is a challenging proposition or a hardship post. In reality, the cities like Dubai, Riyadh and Doha offer world-class infrastructure, safety and world-class lifestyle. And they are also becoming strong global hubs, not just remote outposts. So another assumption is that the expat packages that previously were provided are universally generous. Now, that is a myth that is rapidly changing just due to the number of people that are going into the region. So many offers now exclude housing, they exclude the schooling and the travel allowances, even though living costs are actually rising rapidly in the region. And as I say, the factor is that there's a lot of people coming into the region, so there's a strong increase of exceptional talent available on the ground. So this shift and this myth of people wanting to come into the region, this does really affect how we attract and retain talent, especially for companies that are relocating staff with their families. It's something that we need to consider. So speaking of families, relocation is absolutely possible with families. I went before my family, but I know a lot of people that have come in with their families into region, but it's not always frictionless. So school availability, school places availability, the traffic, getting around these cities is becoming more and more difficult with the volume of traffic. Childcare availability, and even, I guess, spouse or partner employment all play a role to people coming over. Dual career couples are increasingly common, yet spousal employment pathways do remain limited. And finally, I guess, thinking about the education infrastructure. Now, this is expanding fast. So Dubai now has its first boarding schools, and reputable brands like Repton and Harrow are moving into region, which is exciting. Adult learning centres are emerging. So these developments reflect a maturing market and growing demand for long-term educational planning, which then just offers greater opportunity for people wanting to relocate.
So yes, it's very buoyant across the region. It's a hotspot area, really, a lot of the Middle East, and the number one destination for many industry sectors around the world. So there's a lot of movement, and that's reflected in growth in service accommodation and that sort of thing as well. And for our audience, it's a very good pathway that schools and growth in international education and also the growth in accommodation reflect where these hotspots indeed are. Also, I think there's been a lot about these economic zones as well, which can be very attractive for organisations going there. So for all sorts of reasons, the Middle East is considered to be very important at the moment. So is there anything more you'd like to add about supporting globally mobile employees and their families? Because obviously those with children are reluctant to leave, but also, as you touched on, dual career families may be reluctant to go if one of them hasn't got an employment.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And speaking from experience as an expatriate employee that moved over many years ago and found my way in Saudi Arabia. So I guess really it's, the question is, how can employers better support those families, those employees and their families that are moving across and help them. And we will have heard obviously about the economic plans. So I'm going to talk about those as well, kind of in our discussion. But we have the Vision 2030 for Saudi, for example, the D33 with Dubai. And they're there's a lot of focus there on local national hire as well as supporting expatriate hires. But even with this strong focus coming on localization hiring, mobility in the GCC is booming. So over 1,200 people a day are moving to Dubai alone. And that number and that volume of people coming into the region is reshaping housing provision, schooling provision, and even community infrastructure. So I think about, I guess, with all of that change and what we know that, from the mobility sector, we know that it's widely recognised that dissatisfaction amongst staff moving, their spouses and their children is a leading cause of an international assignment failure. So therefore, organisations must be ready for all of this change and supporting employees. And I think there's a number of things that they can do for that. So wellbeing support is a big factor at the moment, and a number of companies in the region are really recognising this and taking action to focus on what they can provide. It's imperative. So the cultural adjustment, it's a big change moving to the Middle East. It's not for everybody, but as we know, as we mentioned earlier, it can be a really great lifestyle to come into, but there is cultural adjustment. The cost of living adjustment as well. We talked about kind of high fees for schools, the congestion moving around the cities, long working hours. It might be that the working hours are different in the GCC compared to home countries as well. And I think even childcare options, for those who have children who aren't at school at that point, but still want to be working, what options are available? And all of these, concerns and these sort of factors do affect retention and well-being of employees. So they're not just really logistical issues, they're actually strategic considerations that companies do need to consider as part of their people strategy to see how they can help their employees.
And I think that leads us on nicely, really, to the pioneering angle of diversity and inclusion that there is going on in the Middle East, and you will have picked up when you yourself worked in Saudi and in your current dealings with the region. So would you like to talk a little bit more about that? Because I think potentially trading spouses are very interested in this area, and women in particular may feel that accepting a role in the Middle East might be challenging for them. So perhaps you could share
absolutely.
a little on that.
Absolutely. So yes, inclusion, it's not just a value, it's a strategic imperative. And I think, again, companies, the government, these economic plans are taking this into account for their workforce moving forward. So I think in particular for new hires, the international new hires, cultural onboarding is essential. I think we talked about cultural nuances, we talked about ways of working. So there's some, I'll kind of talk about that for employees in a second, but you talked about obviously bringing families over and dual careers as well. People are bringing over their partners and their partners do want to work. And this is a change to back in my day when I was in Saudi. At that point, you'd have one partner work or one person working, and then you'd have somebody at home, and it was quite difficult to have a dual career. Nowadays, people coming across want to look at what those options are for their partner. And that's not just, I think, due to the high cost of living, which it is. I think you do, in some circumstances, need a double income for the lifestyle and to kind of pay for the housing options and schools. But also, I think, there's opportunity that people want to be part of this growth that's in the region, and so they're looking for where they fit within that growth as well. So I think what we're finding is that companies are starting to recognise this, and they are looking to offer dual career support for partners. And also flexible working arrangements, hybrid working, remote working. Now, for some industries, such as education, that's not always possible. But I think, having spoken to some of the education groups, actually myself recently, they are starting to look at where this is possible for some particular roles and to help. So I think really for those new hires, what I kind of would recommend is that there are cultural nuances to learn about and understand, and that there are different things that they're going to be looking for. So companies and employers really need to consider this. So for cultural nuances, I think it's about helping them to learn and understand those when they come across. And this could be related to hierarchy, could be related to religious practices, it could be related to even, I guess, indirect communication and distinct social norms. So helping new hires to navigate this, not just within their new workplace, but also their new community. Peer mentoring and clear communication, I think, makes such a difference. And then, as we've just been saying, relocation support must be holistic. So not just about the employee, but also the entire family unit. So that dual career, that partner support, is there options to be able to help them find a role or give them some career advice about how to navigate the market, how to pitch themselves within a really big, high quality talent pool? How do they really, how can they pitch themselves? How can they network, which is particularly important in the GCC? And then how can children settle, even extended family in some cases, if they're joining as well, how do they really find the best way to settle into this community? So I guess you kind of, with the diversity and inclusion, that kind of covers the sort of family element. And then also speaking about the workplace in general, we're also seeing great progress in the Middle East around gender equality, as you'd said, and neurodiversity inclusion as well. There's been great progress made for women stepping into leadership positions, and also growing awareness of how to support neurodivergent learners and staff in the workplace as well.
Yes, and of course there are very many nationalities working in Middle Eastern areas. So we're talking about people moving from all sorts of regions into the area, and how they also are encouraged to communicate and network with the wider community. On to optimising HR processes for continuous improvement, because we just touched on that. And I understand that particularly in the Middle East, young people are going through the system, getting fantastic education and aspirations, and then are going back into the workforce in developing regions and industry sectors, and are looking for acknowledgement of what they've done. And I think that was a relatively new thing to be for employers to be considering. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. So, yes, this actually relates quite well back to the localization strategies that employers are really starting to recognize, I think, that they need to focus on. So, the economic plans that we've mentioned, Saudi Vision 2030, D33, have specific mandates as well for hires, not just around localization actually, but also around bringing, opening up opportunities for our younger generation, because there is a big younger generation in the region. So looking at how best to do that. And what companies are now starting to recognize is that these different generations and different types of employees have different expectations as well. So, I mean, certainly some of the companies that I've been speaking to have been introducing maybe varying reward systems depending on the employee. So a younger employee may, require different benefits, perhaps a different benefits offering to somebody with a family. So they're looking at ways that they can tailor this. They're also looking at those working options, as we had kind of talked about, remote working, hybrid working, opportunities to help them develop within a team, but also have some flexibility around their work-life balance, particularly as we keep saying about the travel is quite long. So again, somebody spending 5 days a week traveling to the office is going to spend quite a lot of time doing that. So I think they're recognizing that that's time that could be better spent for some positions. And also development. So recognising for some of our local hires and for some of our more junior hires that the clear career paths and clear development opportunities of where they can move within the organisation is so important to be able to motivate them and to retain them, and for them to be able to feel that they're making an impact in the organisation. So where previously companies may have had an annual performance review, for example, they're actually bringing that to do that much more often, so that there's that much more regular touch point with these employees to give them that motivation.
And of course, for older workers as well, continuous professional development is welcome, and across areas of technology. So I imagine it's pretty far advanced in the Middle East. So can you shed a bit of light on AI and other opportunities and digitalisation and how that's impacting not only HR processes, but generally for employers and employees?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, AI is a huge focus for the region. Again, these economic plans have got a lot of focus around AI. Dubai have opened a specific AI centre that they are working on, where they want that to be a centre of excellence around AI practices and AI strategy. So that's really exciting to see how that moves forward. What I'm finding is within organisations, particularly I guess within the HR space as well, that there are new kind of new systems and new processes. Well, there's continuous improvement. So what the companies are doing is looking at ways to automate as much as possible, to use data as much as possible as well, to enhance their decision making and to drive their strategies. So some of the examples that I've seen, and I think this is something really important for HR, and HR should always be trying to drive this within the organisation. But I think it's looking at opportunities to build real-time dashboards, to track onboarding, attrition, engagement, to be able to bring in real-life data, to use that data. Using pulse surveys, for example, and exit interviews, being able to automate that so that people can very easily share that information so it can be related back to strategy and workforce development. And metrics, using metrics that can be pulled by AI, that can be pulled through, even if it has to be more manual measures, but using those metrics, not just for data, but for action. So I see a lot of that working very well and making a lot of traction in the Middle East, in HR and in other departments such as finance, facilities, etc. as well.
Thank you. And as we draw to a close now, what are there any other trends shaping the future of work that you'd like to pick up on, and any particular angles of the Middle East?
Yes, yes. So yes, back to the national growth plans like the Vision 2030 in Saudi and D33. They are really driving demand for agile, inclusive HR strategies, as we've talked about. So all companies and HR teams should remain central to these visions, and it's not just about being an industry provision or a provider. It's about being a driver to support this economic transformation as well, and that's what the government is looking for. So HR across all types of industries in the Middle East is evolving and very fast. It's very exciting. We've talked about localization. That's really reshaping hiring strategies. It's that sort of balancing the national mandates with the need for international expertise, and that is becoming something that companies are really trying to manage, because you've got that need pressing now, but then you've also got these mandates that you need to meet, particularly I think within specialists or technical roles or leadership positions. So development and retention of local talent is a key focus. Compensation benchmarking is also more important than ever. So with packages shifting, transparency and clarity are key. So employers need to understand not just what they're providing, but also what support they're providing as well. As we've already talked about, housing, schooling, relocation, career development, it's all of these different pieces that are a big focus in the trends at the moment. And also, I think rapid support for the rapid global expansion. So just to give a really exciting insight, I was lucky enough to attend an exclusive breakfast with His Excellency Hadi Badri, who is the CEO of the Dubai Economic Development Corporation. And he talked about his strategy for Dubai over the next decade. And one of the things that he shared was that within the Dubai Economic Agenda D33, they have a bold aim to position Dubai among the top 3 global cities by 2033. So this is very exciting. Also, then you've got Saudi Arabia, who is following closely on their heels with their massive industry growth that they have. So this is all creating this urgent demand for those schooling provisions, hospitals, housing. And I guess really where that leads back to is HR leaders have to scale then their hiring, their onboarding and their other HR strategies quickly and compliantly to be able to keep up. So there's a lot of focus with the kind of, I guess, global focus on that in the region at the moment.
And also, you have to remember what's going on, very vibrant, and things that people may enjoy also in their leisure time. So, a huge
Yes.
amount of growth and development in areas like sports and entertainment and mega projects, which
Yes.
also they'll be of huge benefit to those living there and taking advantage. So, it sounds like a very buzzy, exciting space. And how did you enjoy personally your time spent in Saudi and living in the
Yes.
different areas of the Middle East?
Yeah, I think it was amazing, to be honest. I think if I kind of look back in my career, I think it would probably be one of the top highlights of my career. One of the best things I've done. It opened up the opportunity to meet and to work with so many people from different culture, from different nationalities, and to really understand and to be able to adapt to the different ways of working and to adapt to those has given me a lot of skills as a HR professional. So I still use those skills today with our kind of changing working environment. So I think I would always recommend, and I always say I'll always recommend to my children as well, if you get the opportunity to try, living and working in a different country, then always please do take that opportunity, because it does just give you such a rich experience.
Oh, that's wonderful, Kelly. Thank you so much
Thank
for your
you.
time today. Thank you very much for joining us and sharing your insights. And you can find out more about Kelly and her insights by checking out her LinkedIn page. She was a global HR director with 17 plus years experience driving people strategy and global mobility across UK, Europe and the GCC. To find out more about Relocate Global and Think Global People, please log on to our website and you'll find lots more insightful webinars around topics including global mobility, leadership and education. And please also watch out for our International Education and Schools Fair, which are a wonderful resource for parents, employers and global mobility professionals, as well as offering a series of mini fact sheets with all sorts of interesting background material.